Hello, everyone, and welcome to Simply Technical. Back again here with another episode. Keaton here as well, of course.
What's up?
We couldn't do a podcast episode without Keaton. Couldn't do a podcast episode without myself, but that would sound too egotistical if I said that about me. So, back again here. It's been a little bit since we recorded. Keaton was on vacation, it sounds like,
Yep.
and glad he's back and safe.
Yeah.
We wanted to kind of talk about charter schools, and as the title of this episode goes, there was some article that was released that Keaton found going into a previous debate that we had about charter schools on our education episode, which I'll link down below.
Yeah. So there was a recent study. So I'll start with a few weeks ago, we did an education episode. I said that it doesn't necessarily seem like where or getting a lottery charter system helped improve student outcomes. The only thing that really helps improve student outcomes is one-on-one tutoring consistently. And at the time, that was kind of true. It wasn't fully true. There are quite a few studies that did show some improvement for charter school kids as compared to public school kids. But most of the time, the methods are a little bit shaky in how they do that. But recently, it was 2 weeks ago, a huge paper came out of Stanford that is very, very well controlled, where every charter school student is matched to a very similar public school student, age matched, income level matched, area where they live matched. And from there, they were able to determine that actually charter schools do improve educational outcomes as compared to public schools. And just to go and sort of into the numbers, what they ended up finding was that during the school year, you have roughly 180-day school year, and the charter school students on average gained an extra 16 days of learning and reading and an extra 6 days in math as compared to their equivalent peer in public school, which doesn't sound like a whole lot to us, but that's quite a bit. That is about a 10% more learning. And then when you start to look at actual individual students and sort of what they determined growth, they found that 36% of charter school students demonstrated stronger growth than their public school peers, and then 47% had about similar progress, and only 17% performed worse than their public school peers. So all in all, charter schools do seem to be more effective than public schools. So I was wrong on that in the last podcast, and I really wanted to bring this study up to sort of negate that old podcast episode, or not the episode, but what I said at the beginning of that podcast, because this is pretty exciting. Education's been pretty stagnant for a long time in the U.S., so finally something seems to be getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, which you said it's extra 16 days a year is approximately.
Yep.
That's over 12 grades. That's 192 days. So that's, it's obviously not continuous, but that's over an extra year.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a whole extra year, especially when you put it like that. That's pretty crazy.
So yeah, that makes sense why they would be doing better if you get quote unquote an extra year.
Mm-hmm.
Now in this study, did they line up like 2-parent households as well, I'm guessing? And
yes, they try to almost exactly match one charter school student. So say, all right, let's just take me. I grew up in Broken Arrow, 2-parent household, certain level of income, and then finding the closest match to me in that city, or if the city is not necessarily Broken Arrow, but very similar to Broken Arrow, also in Oklahoma, that's how they essentially match. So it's like almost a one-to-one matching. It's as good as they could possibly do with controlling the differences in individuals.
Well, I mean, for studies like that, you have to have. I mean, if it's not close, if it's a low income versus a high income, or a 2-parent versus a single parent or a foster situation, maybe like your data is not going to be as good. I mean, you might get the numbers you want, but statistically it's not sound.
Yeah, and that's been one of the big complaints about a lot of the original charter school studies is it's hard to control for that, and it's not easy to do what these Stanford researchers did. They spent a lot of time digging into the data and matching. So yeah, it's about. I mean, it's in medicine you would call it as close to a sort of randomized placebo controlled trial, which is like the gold standard as you can get for medicine. But this is sort of akin to that in sociology, I guess, is what you would call this sort of line of research.
Now, charter schools, the charter school that I know of here in Oklahoma, it's the big one, and I think it's just because it's come under wraps, or I say wraps, it's come under hot water quite a bit. Epic, and I don't necessarily want to go too deep into that, but are charter schools necessarily online? I guess they're physical as well.
Yes, they can be either online, physical location, and it could be in the
Both
inner
and
city,
both.
suburbs. You just have to apply. You have to, I guess, put your charter forward, like draft a charter and send it to government, get it approved. You have to have students because it's usually funded per student. But that's actually probably the most interesting thing about this study is online charter schools did way, way worse than public school students. So despite the online schools doing so much worse than the public schools, the overall charter schools still had this improvement. So if you look at the inner city schools, you actually see a massive improvement in learning as compared to the inner city public schools. So yes, I think that kind of told us what we already knew, was that online school probably sucks and Epic sucked, and no parent should have their kid in online schools right now if they actually care about their kid's education, because they're just inferior.
Well, I guess you could you use a charter school, an online charter school, as like a roadmap for like homeschooling or something? I don't know if that's even a thing, but I mean, I could see if you get your material from there and you're like teaching your kids physically through an online material, then that's a little bit different, even though it might not be charter, I guess.
No, yeah, that makes sense. But I will say, I would even say that almost could be a version of sort of charter school, or I guess I think families call it like a mini schooling, or it's just them utilizing systems like that. I think it could help, but I don't think this was involved in the study. But it's interesting, we talked all about education, and my main opinion on education still stands, is that tutoring is absolutely dominant, and I would prefer to one-on-one teach my kid than teachers if I want to have my kid have a great outcome in education. But this actually shows we aren't just we don't just have our hands tied behind our back, and it's not backs when it comes to education. It's not just about public schools just need more money because we keep putting more money in and for worse and worse outcomes. This, on the other hand, has become this massive political issue on the right and left for some stupid reason. It doesn't make really any ideological sense why, if the data is out there, I want to be voting for whatever party is going to follow the data on for what I consider is like probably the most important issue, which is education. And I really hope that both parties end up aligning to this. But for some reason, the sort of conservative Republican Party has taken up the charter school mantle. But I guess eventually all things end up going to eventually it's like educational Darwinism. They'll win out, and all parties will support this.
Yeah, and I think what's important is you said it's online. Like, I mean, I've known for years when I went to college. Did you take an online college class?
I took one that was like a mini class.
Like, it's so easy to be lazy. It's so easy to not pay attention. And usually, I will say, at least for college, a lot of your easier, I guess, gen ed classes are online. Like, I would not trust anyone that got an engineering degree online. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
I would trust some of my fellow engineering students more than those that did online. But it's just, I guess it proves that point of online, isn't all that it's cracked up to be. And being in person, one, forces you to pay attention. I mean, it's either pay attention or why are you even there? And then two, like being around your peers and studying and getting to know your classmates,
Yeah.
comparing test scores and, oh, well, James got 100 and I got a 99. Well, I got to try that much harder to beat James because he's gloating about his 100. That's a very real thing as
Oh
well in
yeah.
the
Oh
classroom.
yeah.
So you don't get that online.
No, that's very true. I say like when it comes to in person versus online, you have three major factors, and I'd say one of them is your peers, like you said. The competition is massive, especially for a lot of people in really competitive fields. I remember biology at school was really competitive, and everyone was basically trying to beat each other in grades. And then the other one is in person. It is easier to pay attention, like you said. It's easier to catch like a sort of excitement for the learning, because it's a lot easier for a professor or a teacher to be excited in person, though most aren't usually. Uh, but I imagine it's a lot easier to be excited about something whenever you're teaching it to someone that's in front of you, physically in front of you, than on a screen. And then the third one, which I think is the most important and especially relevant for engineering, is it gives you the ability to do physical projects. Like you can't do physical projects online. I mean, how do you distribute the resources to everyone to be able to build an airplane for engineering class, for aero class? How do you get the resources or the lab equipment to do biology lab, to run basic things in lab that help make things stick that you have learned in lecture, because tangible application in the real world is what really makes you learn. So yeah, I think that's the biggest reason.
It might not be a big deal for like computer science or like
True.
computer engineers or something like that, maybe even electrical. Like for mechanical like myself, like yeah, building a bridge and holding weight through the middle of it with a bucket, saying, okay, well, I calculated it's going to hold this much, or building an airplane, like you said, just doing all these projects or thermal fluids labs, understanding why, insulated Yetis or, insulated cups work so well, with the vacuum. Well, we made a vacuum pen, made a pen, like a copper cylinder, and vacuum sealed it and, stirred boiling water and it didn't heat up. But then you put a little bit of water in there and you have air in there, you put in there and it heats up immediately. And you think through of like, oh, well, the heated water heat up the water in there and it evaporated. And then it, heated up the tip of the pen and it burned your hand like instantaneously. And it's just kind of like those cool things of understanding the real world in real time.
Yeah, yeah.
But I will make a observation that I just now thought of. It's interesting that online school doesn't work, but online or remote work does work.
Yeah, yeah.
Like when we're learning, we don't want distractions. Or maybe we do want a little bit of distractions with our classmates and, that competitiveness. But in a workplace environment, those distractions, limit your work. And so I don't know. That may be a different topic for a different episode, but I think that is kind of interesting that online school sucks and online work is
Yeah,
rocks.
I think you actually said it perfect at the beginning when you said that it kind of depends on the field. Like computer science online school probably works pretty well. Oh, you could do online like history. You can learn anything you want online. That's not physical, really. You can't really learn how to build a bridge, like you said. You can learn the theory, but you can't learn the application. It's good to learn the theory online and then eventually apply it. But I also think that's similar for remote work. Is some jobs do really well with remote work, and some jobs probably are not so uh, cohesive with a remote work situation. And you see this massive movement right now of people like pushing against remote work, and I think that they're speaking in like absolutist terms, where they're saying remote work never works and it's always inferior. And I think they're just wrong, because it probably just doesn't work for whatever their setup, their company is. If you need to be in person, if you need some serendipity, some random running in to people talking about interesting things, then yeah, you want to work in person. But if you're head down, I mean, programming seems like a great one. Head down programming, or head down doing accounting, then what remote work makes way more sense because you don't have the distractions, like you said.
Yeah, and I guess the work that I'm in, they're pushing. It's a large corporation. They're pushing everybody to go back in to max amount of time, and I don't think it's going to work all that well because they want people to they say, "Well, collab." Well, why do I got to go sit at my desk and have an online meeting with somebody that's in Philadelphia or um, in Los Angeles? Like, why do I need to be in the office for that? So it's this weird dynamic that I think we have to sort through, and it's a balancing act because these obviously businesses, they don't want to waste their investment when it comes to, well, we just spent $10 billion on this new complex.
You better come in.
You better come in.
Yeah.
Versus the people of like at Paycom, I know their software, they released, hey, everybody back in the office, even though programmers were 10 to 15% more effective and efficient. It's like, huh?
Yeah.
But also from the side of, well, we just spent a bunch of money on this new complex and all this stuff in the office. So I don't know. It's there's give and take for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. But and I think that's how everything is going to be. It's like never exact, and that's how it's going to be for education. You'll probably, I mean, that's what makes the whole charter school thing so interesting to me. And I really didn't know this stuff until like 2 weeks ago. So I'm still very new and don't know it very well. But what makes it nice is it's basically free market. Um, it's federally or locally funded by the taxpayer generally, but it's tied per pupil funding. So like a student travels with their own funding. So it doesn't change anything in the tax schema, and it allows for this sort of, I already called it once, this educational Darwinism where models that don't work, parents can move and pull their kids out and put them in a different model of charter school, which doesn't happen in the public school system. When public schools suck, you can't do anything. The only thing you can do is move or pay for private school. And that's obviously not feasible for
a majority of people.
Yes. So this whole system, I don't know why I never looked into it. I kind of just got into the politics of it and like was like, okay, well, this just seems like it's become a political issue, but it's really not. It's a good idea, kind of, to have models that build a better educational system, because eventually we'll all coalesce to the best.
Yeah, and I mean it does drive that competition of, if we want to stay in business, we want to get more students. Okay, if it gets out that we have sucky teachers, we're going to lose some students.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you have 2 or 3 charter schools options in your area.
Yeah, and I actually think it helps public school teachers, because if a charter school is going to pull, start reaching out to the public school teachers who are good and ask to pay them way more than what they're getting paid at the public school, well, that's going to create a competitive market for teachers who are going to end up making more. And it's funny because generally the teachers' unions are what fights this the most, when realistically it would probably help them after all.
Yeah. Well, if you ask me, unions are kind of dumb.
They are.
They serve their purpose, but
a government, I guess, people paid by the government, by the taxpayer, unionizing is a little bit strange, I guess, in the union model, because you don't really have a boss. you're striking against. You're striking kind of against the people who have elected officials to do what they elected them to do, not what the teachers wanted them to do. But I don't really know too much about that. I just think that this whole competition idea that I never really considered before is very interesting, especially now that it has data behind it. All I care is about the data. I care what if it I don't get ideological about this stuff, but if it's shown that it works with a good study, then that's what I'm gonna pick every time. And I think everyone should be that way.
Yeah. Well, speaking of politics and like charter schools, recently Oklahoma passed the first Catholic school to be a charter. I think is that right?
Yeah, I saw this. I saw this. Uh, I don't. Did they fully pass it? I don't know. Did
Uh,
it?
the way that I heard it, it was
Okay, okay.
it was
I
passed,
think
but
I think it was. I know that at least they were applying for funding,
yeah,
or
I think it was because it was like I saw it on TikTok from like some big channel of like, oh, Oklahoma just accepted the first religious charter school, which we can get into like the details on it, but I mean, it sounds like we're all kind of for charter schools, or you should be kind of for charter schools,
yeah,
but a religious one, as a religious person, you would think I'd be kind of for that, but I don't know. I don't know if I want that stuff intermixed because what stops the government from saying, well, we're going to pull your funding if, like,
yeah,
especially Catholic, like, if you don't start providing condoms or some sort of birth control, then we're going to pull your funding. And then they get in this big long battle of just like Hobby Lobby did, and the Catholics, providing insurance that had to use contraception, and it just opens up a can of worms. So
yeah,
I'm very much against intertwining the Catholic charter school and the government.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I fall on that same side. It's basically like a separation of church and state issue. It probably would not be constitutional, although I'm not entirely sure. Um, there's probably some precedent for this that I'm not aware of. But yeah, it seems to violate that aspect. But I'll play some devil's advocate here. Um, the normal response is Oklahoma would never approve a Church of Satan school, charter school, which okay, I think that's probably true, but if, for instance, they had 1,000 parents who wanted to have their kids in, and they had the funding to do it, I think they probably would,
They'd have to.
just off of precedent. But the thing is, that's not going to happen. So, and obviously, if you wanted, and again, this is not my opinion. My opinion is on the church separation of church and state. So, but going with what they argue is if you want to have this free market charter school, and say people are too poor to afford a private school, then giving them this private Catholic school, then giving them an option to uh, be able to get the education that the parents prefer, the educational freedom that they want, is ideal in some circumstances. And if the
Yeah,
school sucks, then naturally the Darwinism should happen and it should die because it will die naturally. Some will take much longer than others.
I think a Catholic school would,
Probably.
just because I think people would be more,
It's more ideological based than educational based.
yeah, they're more worried about that their kids are in a Catholic school than. But I would think that this is a little bit off top, or not off topic, but a little, I guess, off. I don't know. Anyways, I would think that if you're a Catholic, you would get some sort of scholarship to go to the school if you wanted to. So, um,
Yeah, people probably would pay.
like they donate. Hey, this is for church scholarships. Like I want to make sure that little Johnny and Joey get to go, and Sally get to go to Catholic school, even though they can't afford it. Here's a scholarship that I set up for them, kind of thing. Or the
Yeah,
church would give them some sort of scholarship of, okay, well, you've attended this church for X amount of years. Go ahead and we'll give you a scholarship for. So I don't know how big of an issue it is that if you're Catholic and you really wanted to go to a Catholic school, Catholic high school, or do you really need it to be public? I don't know. I'm not in that situation, so I have no idea.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know what will end up happening. I mean, did I get
No,
my
you're fine.
back? Okay, I'm back. I lost my train of thought completely on that freeze up.
Well, the charter school side, or I guess the devil's advocate side, would be you want more. You would need more. You want more charter schools. Charter schools are good. You want more charter schools. Then church people, and you might have already made this point. Church people should be able to have the same opportunity to go to a church charter school rather than just a public charter school. So that's maybe a devil's advocate side of
Yeah,
well,
that's
it needs to
essentially
be
what I'm saying.
equal opportunity.
Yeah, the educational freedom maximalism is, well, everyone, if someone wants to make a charter school, Church of Satan, then let's let at it then, and it'll probably fail because no one's going to go to that school. Like it would
Very
just
few
become.
people and very few people would want to teach there.
Yes,
And
yes,
imagine putting that on your resume. Yeah, for
yeah,
the last 6 years, I taught at Church of Satan
mhm,
in Oklahoma City.
yeah. So I mean, I I fall on the other side of the aisle with this argument, but I'm not so strongly as it's caused quite an uproar, on Twitter with people saying this is an absolute violation of our liberties, because I think some people misunderstand the how these schools are funded. They think that, okay, the taxpayer dollars are gonna just go straight to the charter school, but they go with the student that's in the charter school. So it's kind of like paying for your kid to go to a certain um, school, but it's through your essentially your taxes. And so it's not really taking any resources away. It's just keeping it kind of tied with that individual kid, as probably most funding mechanisms should be.
Well, I mean, that's something that Oklahoma's debated about for the last, I don't know, 4 years, 6 years, probably is, well, we should have school freedom choice. And if my kid wants to go to Yukon instead of Mustang, well, my property tax needs to go to Yukon and my student's going to go to Yukon.
Yeah.
Um, and so they've been debating that for at least several years now. And I'm kind of on that side of, well, if I have a teacher that I really like that's really good and they transfer to Yukon from Oklahoma City, then maybe I should be able to follow them. I guess then that might cause an issue of, well, I didn't get that teacher, if I go there,
Yeah.
but um, I still think it should at least be tied somewhat. Um,
Yeah, it's really an unfair mandate the way they've put it, to where, a lot of education, public school funding is funded off of, well, your local
property.
tax income. So that all of the public schools with the most money are, of course, the public schools where the richest people are. It's not really fair. It's not fair at all. And that's why inner city students do so poorly as compared to the suburbs. The charter school system fixes that, because inner city kids can't charter schools can pop up in the inner city areas, and if they're better than the public school, then everyone's going to want to send their kid there. If they're not, then they'll send them to another school. It just gives movement, allows for movement around.
Yeah, and I guess you got to be careful. It would even out, I think, in a little bit in the fact of like, okay, I might not have, like, say, I'm in inner city school, I might not have the best teachers, but I got 40 kids to a teacher. Okay, well now 20 of those kids go to a charter school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I have more one-on-one time with my students. So
Exactly.
so it would definitely promote more schools to, one, pop up, and two, you would hope or would think in theoretical that it would drive the student teacher ratio down.
Yes, that's exactly right. And hopefully, what would happen is you would get that more, or the decrease in the student to, or the decrease in the teacher to student ratio, which is been shown many times to be much better for educational outcomes. So
Well,
it's
there's a
not.
reason why when we went to school and in college, they pushed that quite a bit. Hey, you go to a public school, you got 100-to-1 faculty ratio.
Oh yeah.
And, where we went to school, private school, They touted how much it was like 13-1.
Yeah.
And like obviously that kind of drove me a little bit of like, well, I'd like to actually know my professors and I'd like them to know my name, even though some of them didn't.
Yep.
Getting called Guy all the time isn't necessarily great when there's only 12 other students, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You have any final thoughts or kind of clarify anything you said so far about charter schools or the Catholic school?
Not on the Catholic school, but just on charter schools in general. Final wrap up. They're better than public schools, especially inner city public schools. Inner city charter schools are superior. Online charter schools suck. They failed, and they will fail. It provides educational Darwinism, so the best system survives. So it's ideal, and I really hope that it becomes unpolitical, because when you have data, you don't need politics. Both parties should agree on the data. I guess it's not really science, but I guess you'd call it the social science of it. So I really hope it becomes an unpolitical issue. And just to learn a little bit more, I couldn't stand this guy on Twitter, just because he's super political on Twitter, is Corey DeAngelis, but he's a big proponent for charter schools. But listen to him on some podcasts or YouTube videos where he is less ideological on the political front, and he's just talking about the schools. I learned quite a bit and thought it was very interesting. So that's my final thoughts on that. What about you?
My final thoughts, I do hope it becomes unpolitical. I mean, I'm all for less Republican and Democrat fighting over things, which will never happen. I mean, we politicize COVID and, being sick.
True.
That was super politicized. So why shouldn't we politicize our kids even more? If only you cared about your kids, you wouldn't vote for this, or you would vote for this. And that's going to be, I don't think it's going to be that big of a hot topic this election, but I think in next election cycle, it'll probably be pretty big, as Republicans are going to try to push more things through that they're fond of, and after they get elected this year.
No, yeah, they probably will. So you mean on the educational front, or
yeah. I think they might mention it now, but I think in 2028, I think they'll use it a lot more then. I think it'll be a hotter topic then.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens, because you'll end up seeing a bunch, if it stays a political issue and doesn't go with the data, you'll see the Democrats will become the very thing they hate on the Republican side, on the extremist Republican side, where you have sort of conspiracy theories where you pull studies that show what you want them to show, that have just terrible data, terrible methodology. They'll end up pulling those studies that show public schools are better than charter schools, but the methodology will be inferior to what this paper was, and it'll be very frustrating. But I can definitely see what you're saying happening.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it's going to be too big of a hot topic right now, but I think in the future it'll be. I think the next election cycle after this one, it'll be a big deal, because I think Republicans won't need to use it right now. It's all about having the weapons you need to win, and then using them at the most ideal time. And right now, the Republicans, they don't need any weapons to defeat Joe Biden. Like, this might be super political. I'm not advocating for either side. I'm just saying, from a outside view looking in, that they don't need any weapons to beat Joe Biden. Now, granted, if somebody else makes a primary, then they might need to use it now. That's just my thought.
Yeah. I think I kind of agree. I mean, Joe Biden's very beatable, but I think Democrats realize that, and that's why they want Trump to win the primary, because he's also very beatable. It's like another election again between the two worst candidates.
Well, second worst candidate, Joe Biden, was not worse than Hillary. I don't know. Actually,
yeah.
I don't know. I guess I haven't really thought about it that much.
Yeah.
In my mind, I've always thought Hillary was like the worst candidate of all time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a different bad candidate, because it's just kind of sad. Like, he's getting old. He's very old, not getting old, and obviously not fit.
Yeah. Well, when we get closer to election, maybe we can talk more about each candidate and what they believe. That'd be good. Episode.
Yeah. And I will say, we were talking about this. I don't know if it was in our group text or my other one, but that this is going to be just the most ridiculous, insane primary of all time. Like, the candidates that are in right now is just mind blowing. Like, what are these people? It's gonna be weird.
Yeah, I need to see who's going to be a libertarian and see if I want to vote for them. So, do you have anything else? We were going
Nope.
to talk about the submarine, but I think we're going to skip it for now.
Yeah.
We'll wait for more information to come out.
Yeah, it'll probably next week, because I mean
they'll probably find stuff out tomorrow or the day after.
I mean, they only have, at this point when we're recording, they have like 48 hours theoretically of oxygen left. So
yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, look up the submarine that was viewing the Titanic, and when you look it up, I bet by the time this episode's released, there'll be information out. But anyways, this has been Simply Technical. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
See ya.